Okay, good morning, Year 11. You're not going to have to see my face for very long because we're going to start doing a screen share in a minute where we'll look at the revision booklet. So we're going to go over the revision booklet, reminding us what is in there, why it's important, covering some of those key areas of the exam. And we're also going to look at some of the camera angles, because I know that's something that some of you wanted to cover. And we're going to take a look at another past paper as well. So you've got access to all these documents on your Google Classroom, but we're going to do a share on the screen now so you can see what I'm talking about as I'm going through it. I've got nothing in the live chat to say that people can't hear me, so I'm assuming everybody can hear me this time now that we've got that working. But remember, you have got that chat option, so if you've got a question or you're not sure about something, pop it in that chat box, type it up, and I'll be able to answer it for you. So the where am I? There I am. What I want to cover now is looking through your revision guide again. So let's go through that. Share. Okay, so what you should be able to see now is the revision guide coming up on the screen. So we're going to go through that. I'm just going to remind you how we should be using that and why it's really important that you're using it, why it's very, very important. So obviously on the first page, we've just got a recap of actually what is pre-production. I very much doubt they will ask you what is pre-production on the exam. They've never done it before, looking at any of the other past papers. However, that's there just in case to recap what it is we should be revising for the exam. Now, the production briefs then, really, really important. As I've said to you lots and lots of times in lessons and in revision sessions, these give you the scenario for the exam, okay? So all of the questions on the exam are going to be asking you about the kinds of pre-production documents that you might make for this scenario that they give you. Okay, so every single exam will have this. It will be at the very, very top of the exam before question 1. Okay. So here's 2 examples, and these are from the real exams. You should be familiar with both of these because this one, example 1, was from our walking talking mock that we did, and this one was from an actual mock that you did in lesson. Okay, so why these production briefs or briefs are important is because they give you clues that will help you answer some of the questions. Okay, so Winged Breath is a 4-person rock band. So straight away there, we've got a clue about the genre that we're going to be talking about or could potentially talk about in the exam. Okay, remember, genre is just a fancy word for the type or kind of media text that you're looking at. So it could be rock, for example, is a genre, comedy, horror, those sorts of things. So that's the first clue. And I've said this to you before as well, this is your exam paper, write notes on it. Okay, so the first thing you could do is just underline that. It takes you a millisecond to just underline something, okay? Winged Breath has a target audience ranging from 14 to 30 years of age. Another massive clue there that will help you to answer some of the questions that will come up on the exam paper. So you underline that, okay? Winged Breath wants to release a documentary film. Well, now we're starting to be told a little bit about the kind of text that they're going to ask you pre-production questions about. So I would underline that as well. They're giving you a clue. It's a documentary film, okay? About the band and its next concert on DVD. So I would also underline that because they're telling you that it's going to be made into a DVD. So but there could potentially be questions about the pre-production documents that you would make for a DVD, such as a visualization diagram for a cover, something like that. You've been asked to prepare a series of pre-production documents to present to the band before filming can begin. So those briefs are really important because they'll help you to be able to answer some of the questions. Okay. The other example, again, should be familiar to you. We have looked at these in lessons. Zeta Level is launching a new construction toy based on building blocks of various sizes. The product is to be on sale in the lead up to the festive season. So I would underline that because it's telling you when this product is going to be sold. In the UK, I would underline that because it's telling us where it's going to be sold. These are two key elements of understanding your target audience. You've been asked to create pre-production documents for a promotional campaign which will use TV, radio and the internet. So I would underline those as well because it's telling you that you're going to have to come up with some sort of advertising campaign. Okay, so you need to read those really carefully because they give you clues in the exam. I'm just going to check the chat and see if anybody's asked me any questions about that. No, everybody's okay with that. Okay, fine. So I'm going to move on then. The 6 key documents you need to make sure you've revised from this booklet. It shows you their mood board, mind map or spider diagram. They could call it either or in the exam. Visualization diagram, script, storyboard, work plan. Now, I went over this in the revision session that we did last week in school. The answers to the questions, oh, that's useful. The answers to the questions that you need for the exam are in this booklet. They're all here, okay? So as long as you have revised these sorts of things. So can you describe what each of these documents is? What is it? What's it for? Okay. Can you identify examples and ways of producing them? Can you state what should go in them? Explain the purpose and why it's useful. Produce correct and appropriate versions. Okay. So what we talked about in the revision session last week was some of you in your mock exam seem to forget to focus on what the question's actually asking you and looking at those command words that the exam is using. And that did confuse some people or trip some people up. So all the answers to the sorts of questions, particularly for section A, are in this booklet. They are here. Okay, you just need to not just read this booklet, and this is what I said to you in the revision session last week. Just reading it is not going to make it go in. Okay, test yourselves, ask somebody at home to ask you questions, or make some flashcards or something like that, because that's what's going to get it to go in, because all the answers are here. So there's a chance that on the exam they will ask you what the purpose of any of those documents is, so of any of these documents. And the purpose of each one is written here for you. It's usually the first sentence that opens up each section, okay? Sometimes it's more than one sentence, sometimes it's one sentence, but the answer is there for you. It's then just a case of remembering that, okay? So mood boards, the purpose of them, they're used to generate ideas for media products in development. Let's jump down to mind maps or spider diagrams. They help you to organise your creative thoughts when it comes to planning. Visualisation diagrams, it's a rough sketch or plan of your product. A script is written text of a product, can be the moving image or radio, used to show what is said, where, when and how. Okay, now that one, for example, on the mock exam, you were asked what is the purpose of a script. I believe that was question 4 on the mock exam. And a lot of you clearly did know this, but the way you wrote your answer was too generic, it was too generalized. So a lot of you said things like, so they know what to say and when. So the examiner's going to think, well, who's they? What do they mean by that? Okay, so you need to try and be very specific in the way you answer the question. So instead of saying, so they know, you might say, so the cast and crew know what should be said, where, when, and how. Okay, it's that simple, just making it that little bit more specific so the examiner doesn't think that you're kind of guessing, okay? Storyboard, again, there's your answer to the purpose of a storyboard, sequence of drawings, with information about how to film the scenes. A work plan, set of tasks and activities that must be completed in order to finish a project to the correct timescale or deadline. Okay, so the reason I banged on so much about this booklet is because everything you need is in here, quite simply. Okay, the other thing that they might ask you, although they will ask you on the exam, are things like what should be included in a storyboard, or what should be included in a work plan. Okay, for example, in the mock exam, they did ask you what should be included in a work plan. Again, all the answers to those questions are here. For example, mood boards, it tells you a bullet point list of things that could be included. So for each of the pre-production documents, you could do yourself a little flashcard of the things that can be included. Okay, you don't even really have to memorize all of them, because these are the sorts of short answer questions that come up on section A. So you could memorize 3 or 4. Okay, let's jump to the mind maps one. There you go, a list there of things that could be included. Notice how for the mood boards and the mind maps or spider diagrams, it says that they can include. So some mind maps won't have any images on, others will. Some mind maps won't have any drawings on, others will. Okay, however, for a script, it tells you that a script must include. Okay, so these are the things that have to go in a script. There's no leaving it to chance, no choice. Okay, and again, we've been through all of these things. You've got a nice example here as well of where those things are on a script. Okay, so a labeled example. Again, many of you, because you were asked in the first part of their of this mock exam what the scripts included, and a lot of you did write dialogue, but you didn't spell it correctly. That's a key word. Okay, so another thing is, if you're using these flashcards, that help you with your spelling. Okay, I noticed we've got a question pop up. Different camera angles and their meanings. Sapphire, I'm going to go over the camera angles and meanings after I've just covered this revision guide again. Okay, so that will be coming up in 15 minutes or so. Okay. Okay. Let's just very quickly run through. Produce correct and appropriate versions of the documents. Now, in here again, there are examples of all the kinds of documents. Okay, because in the exam at one point for section B, you will be asked to create a type of pre-production document based on the brief that you've been given. So you do need to be able to create them now. Mood boards, for example, really require specific sort of resources. You need either a stack of magazines that you can look through ideas and images for, or you need a computer where you can search for those ideas and search for images to use. So I think it's highly unlikely they will ask you to do a mood board, because it's such a visual pre-production document, and in the exam all you will have is a few coloured pencils and you know, a pencil and a pen. Mind maps and spider diagrams, they could ask you to do one of those. It's very easy to do one of those on paper. So again, you've got some examples here of how they could be split up. A very important thing about mind maps and spider diagrams, because they can be used to organise your creative thoughts, you need to think of them as an organised chart. Okay, so if we look at this example here of poster ideas, okay, so this is clearly somebody creating some sort of promotional poster for a media product. These ideas are organised. They are not just thrown on the page anywhere. Okay, so for example, here they've said they need some lettering, so they need to research lettering and fonts, okay? And then from this subheading of lettering, they have said what they're going to need to use the lettering for, the titles of the film name, and the film company logo. Okay, so that's organized because everything that relates to font and lettering is connected to that section. Okay, over here they've said they need some close-ups, and then they've said what they need the close-ups of. The femme fatale, the family of the dead, the main character, the detective. That's all connected to that subheading of close-ups. Okay, so it's really important if they ask you to do a mind map or a spider diagram, that you're thinking about how you would organize it. Okay, it's not just all ideas thrown on a page, because you won't get the marks for that. Okay, and all the examples I've put on here are organized. Okay, this one has they've used color to color code it even more. Okay, visualization diagrams, this is what they asked you to do in the mock exam. A visualization diagram. Excuse me. The one thing that I will say many people did trip up on here with the visualization diagram was labeling. Okay, lots of people just drawing stuff. Okay, and it related to the question and it related to the brief, but the purpose of a pre-production visualization diagram is to show what your ideas are and why. Okay, so if you notice on this, I know it's quite small, but you can see a lot of these things are labeled, got little labels linking to them. Okay, that is really important. So for example, if you were asked to do a pre-production document visualization diagram, which was the DVD cover for the band, the rock band, you might have the name of the band right in the center of the DVD cover in an appropriate font in black. Then you might label that to explain why it's black, how it links to the target audience, or how it links to the genre. Okay, so you might say, well, it's a rock band. Rock is considered to be quite dark and a little bit dangerous, so I've chosen black. Very quick little annotation or note or label. Okay, really need to be doing that because that's a 7-mark question. You're not going to get 7 marks just for drawing out your idea. You need to show why you've made those decisions, and obviously that will link back to the brief. Okay. The script, if you are asked to do a script for a product, you should be given some sort of tips or guidance or content that they want you to make sure you include. So they might give you some dialogue just written up normally and ask you to turn it into a script. Okay, the key thing to remember about that is script formatting. And we've practiced this because we did it in a lesson where I gave you all a story and you had to turn that story into a script. And you should be able to access that and have a look at that on your Google Drives as well. But here we've got an example. Certain things have to go in certain places, remember. The slug line, or what we also call a scene header, okay, includes those 2 pieces of information, the location and the time of day. So the location, remember, is interior or exterior. INT or EXT, sorry, that should go in capitals on the left. Okay, your action or direction is not in capitals, that also goes on the left, but your dialogue should go in the center. Okay, so that's important. Okay, right, I've just got another question about will you get marked down for grammar? If you will certainly be marked down if you're not spelling key media terms correctly. So I sort of talked about this a little bit earlier about using the term dialogue. If you're asked what should be included in a script, one of those elements is dialogue, and lots of people in the exam were spelling it without putting the U and the E on the end. Okay, so it was DAILOG. And so you would get marked down for that because it's a key word that's not being spelt correctly. Other parts of the exam, such as the final question, which is the short essay question, you will get marked down for grammar there if your grammar is affecting the marker actually understanding what you're trying to say, getting your point across. Okay. So my advice for Tuesday, okay, is read the question properly so that you know exactly the points you want to try and make. We talked about this in the revision session on Thursday. For that final question, which is the mini essay style question and the one where the grammar will be most important, use the documents they give you to help you structure your answer. So then your point will be clear because you're structuring it properly. Okay. I will cover this in a bit more detail when we look at the past paper in a minute. What I'd like to do now is go on to the camera angles because that's something that somebody's asked about. So if I just change this, so we're going to show you a different document now. This is the one I want to show you. There we go. Okay. You should be able to see. Oops. Okay. You should be able to see. Oops. Okay. Got an issue. You should be able to see. Right. I'm hoping everybody can still see that because it's a funny issue just happened then where I was having feedback. So anybody who's watching, can you do me a favour and just write in the chat whether you can actually see the document showing on the screen, the type of shots, examples and meaning? Because that little bit of feedback, I'm wondering whether you can all see it now. No, nobody's answering me. Okay, I'll just carry on. Let's hope you can see it, everybody. So, I know some people in the lesson were asking about this, and also somebody's just asked about it in the chat now. So, these are all the different camera angles. Okay, you have got access to this document. It's on Google Drive, your Google Classroom, and it has been there for some time. It's called type of shot. Okay, and the little screenshot, you'll see these little pictures on it, so you should be able to identify it. So it tells you for each one the name of the shot and the shorthand that you can use. So if you're doing a storyboard, instead of writing mid shot or close up, you can just use these little shorthands, MS, CU. Gives you an example of what each one should look like and tells you the meaning that they create. Okay, so for a mid shot, okay, the meaning that they create is that it allows you to see the body language and the relationships between characters, because you can see enough of their body to see sort of how close they're standing to one another, what their arms and hands are doing, because that's a big important part of body language. Mid shots are also good in terms of the meaning they create, because it also allows you to see the relationship between the character that you're seeing and their surroundings. Okay. Finally, for the mid shot, depending on where the characters are placed, it can represent their power or importance. So in this example, the character who's the main part of the mid shot is very close to the screen. She's very close to the front. If we had another character in the background, for example, who was behind her, so further away from the screen, that can show that she is more important or more powerful than them in this present moment, in this shot. Okay. A close-up then, the head takes up the whole frame. Okay. This is very important in terms of the meaning it creates, because it allows you to show the subject's emotions. Okay. And it also lets the audience see the difference between a main character and a less important character, because the main character will be shown in more close-ups. So say, for example, if you have a scene where you have 6 characters all in the scene, like a group of friends all in the scene, but you have one character who's shown in a close-up more than any of the others, then the audience would start to make that connection between that person seen in close-up and them being more important. A medium close-up, this is sort of from the shoulders of the character. It's more intimate than a long shot, but not as intense as a close-up. Okay, so it doesn't feel as personal and in your personal space as a close-up, but it's more intimate than a long shot. Extreme close-up, this is when we focus on a really small detail or aspect of a subject. So in this example, we're focusing right in on the eye of this character, extreme close-up, ECU. This is it can be used for dramatic effect. The audience gets really close up and personal with the subject or the object, and it can often be used to increase emotion, tension, or panic in a scene. So if you have a scene where character is under threat, you know, their life is in danger or something, we might see an extreme close-up of their eyes, because that allows us to show the panic in their face really clearly. Okay, a bird's eye view then is used often from sort of a helicopter or something, or an aeroplane. It's shot really, really high up, and it's used to show the smallness of something. Because you're so high up, you're in a helicopter shooting down. It can also be used to show where a film is set, or a TV show or something. So often these kinds of shots are used at the very beginning of the very beginning of films, when we're establishing where it's been set. Okay, so at the very beginning of the film, we might see a bird's eye view of New York City, and we might see some of the key landmarks of New York City, and that gives us the clue of where we are. Okay, or we might see a bird's eye view of London, and we might see the big wheel that we have in London, and the Houses of Parliament, and Big Ben, and that gives us a clue where we are. I'm not going to talk about crane shot. I'm going to talk about low angle. So this is where the shot is positioned below the eye line, looking upwards. So if you think about it in the way that this would be filmed, the camera is it's almost as if you're crouching down and filming with the camera pointed upwards. Okay, and so because of that, the subject or the person in the shot looks really tall. Okay, because you're shooting from below them. All right, and they might also be looking down as well. So that means that the person in the shot looks big and powerful and very threatening. So if you look at that example there, it makes the audience feel weak and vulnerable. Okay, and it makes the person in the shot, or the character, look powerful and in control. The high angle shot is the opposite way around. This is where the shot is positioned above the eye line and you're looking downwards. So if you imagine, if you look at the picture, if you imagine how this might have been shot, the person holding the camera might be on a step ladder and looking down on the subject. Okay, so this makes the person in the shot look small and vulnerable and powerless, and it makes the audience feel like they are in control. Okay, so that's why you might use those two sorts of shots. A Dutch angle shot or a tilt shot. These are shots so that the subjects or objects do not appear straight. So if you look at the difference between this one here and this one, okay, here we have a 90-degree angle. Okay, and so whenever you're filming, you would want your actors or characters to appear to be at a 90-degree angle. So roughly, they would look like they were standing up straight compared to this line here. If you look in this example, that's not the case. The characters look at a 45-degree angle. So if we drew an imaginary line here, which is roughly the sort of way that this character is standing, that would be, instead of a 90-degree angle, wouldn't be 45, sorry, it would be more than 45 because you're pushing over to the left. Anyway, basically the characters look tilted. Okay, now this can be used to show chaos or panic. So if you had to do a scene where there's just been an explosion, okay, something had just been blown up, the way that you show the characters after that explosion, you might use a Dutch tilt because it helps to show the panic or chaos that would happen after an explosion. A long shot, LS, this is you can see the entire subject, okay, so you can see them pretty much head to toe, and you can also see where they are. Okay, that's important because it can be used to open a scene so we can get a sense of where the character is in the scene and what's around them, and also because you can see what's around them, you can start to understand where it's set. Okay, extreme long shot, or it can sometimes be called an establishing shot, is again used to set the scene. Often it's used to show a building or a landscape before we cut to the inside of the building where the scene is happening. Okay, gives information to the audience about where we are, things like that. Point of view shot, or POV, that is used to try and get the audience to feel like they are in the character's shoes. Okay, so point of view shot is where you almost imagine that the camera is in the eyes of the key character. So in this example, it's almost as if we are sat on that bike, okay, because of the way we can see the hand holding the handlebar and we can see where it's going. So it definitely puts the audience in the character's shoes. So if you want the audience to feel what the character's feeling, you might use a POV shot, okay, or a point of view shot. Okay, I don't know where the examples have gone for high key and low key, but I'll find a couple of examples on the internet instead. Okay, so this is a good example. Okay, so high key is when you have extra lights that are set very high to create overexposure or almost blot out the background. So basically high key lighting is when the scene looks very, very bright. Okay, and this is often used to convey happiness or positive emotions, or that things are going well. It can sometimes also be used to show like a dreamlike sequence because everything's really, really bright. So we'll look at this example. Notice how we've seem to have like really, really bright light coming from this angle, and everything in the background is almost washed out because it's so bright. That would be a good example of high key lighting. But also this example here, the point of view shot, is also a good example of high key lighting because it's very bright. We don't have a lot of shadow. Those two examples are used for very different reasons. Okay, so in this Harry Potter example, this is from the last Harry Potter film, they're trying to use high key lighting to show that this is almost like a dreamlike sequence. We're not sure whether it's real or not, and we're not quite sure exactly where we are because is it dream, is it heaven, what is it? Okay, whereas in this example, the high key lighting has been used to show that actually this is you know, a nice positive or happy experience for the main character. If we look at low key lighting then, it's not a very big picture. Let's try and find a bigger one. It's a bit better. Okay, so low key then is when the lights on set are muted or turned off, so we have lots of shadow. So essentially it's very dark. Okay, this is used to show or convey sadness or danger or negative emotions. So if we look at the example, this one, again, this is from the Harry Potter films. If you notice, for example, Ron's face here is very much in shadow on this side. Can't really see. Hermione again on shadow on this side. Harry seems to have some sort of shadow going kind of diagonally across his face. In the background, this is very much in shadow over here. We've got a shadow over here. So the scene from Harry Potter, it's the scene where Luna's dad sort of sells them out, basically grasses them up, and they get caught after they've gone to his house. So it's, you know, it's a bad scene, it's a negative scene, not very nice things are happening, which is why they would have chosen low-key lighting for this scene. Okay, so those are the shot types. You will need these if you're being asked to do a storyboard, which could be one of the questions on section B, but they could also give you an example of a storyboard and ask you to assess it, and that would be section C. Okay, and again, in your revision guide, there are some examples of storyboards and how they should look, and again, you've got that list of the items that should be included in a storyboard. Okay. Let's just check if we've got any more questions. Brilliant. So everybody could see what I was going through there, which is excellent. And people were telling me that they kind of understood what those shots were. Okay. Like I said, remember that you can look at that. What you could even do if you wanted is print this out and just cut it up. Okay, so if you cut it into strips so you can see the name of the shot, the picture of the shot, and the meaning created, you've got essentially mini flashcards already made. Okay, because they're already there for you. Then what you could even do, if you cut these out and cut them into strips, you could have you could fold over this side. So if you folded that so it went behind the picture, so all you can see is the example and the meaning created. If you're holding that up and looking at it, you could try and guess what kind of shot it is. Say if you've got a big brother or big sister or parent or whatever who's going to sit opposite you, they'd be able to see this if it was folded behind the back. And if you said, oh, I think this is a mid shot, they'd be able to say yes or no. Then you can move on. So you've got a little flashcard, set of flashcards and a little revision game wrapped up into one in this document if you just print it out and cut them out. Okay, cut them into strips. All right, so there's another little tip for you for your revision. Right, very quickly then, for the last sort of 20 minutes of the revision session, what I want to do is go over, where's my mouse not working? An actual paper, okay? And again, you've got access to these. You can see all of these on your Google Classroom. They're all there for you. Okay, there we go. Okay, so another example of a paper. Let's just very quickly go over this and we'll look at some tips, okay? There are on the Google Classroom 4 examples of past papers. You have seen a couple of them before from doing our walking, talking, marking lessons and things like that. But there's no reason why you can't test yourself now, go over them, answer some of the questions, bring them in on Monday and I can mark them for you, okay? Because we do have a lesson tomorrow. Okay, so this one then, section A, straight away, we've got our brief, okay? Youth is a new youth centre. It's opening up ready for the start of the new school year so that there is somewhere for teenagers to go in the evening. It's a joint project between local youth workers and the police community support officers. Youth wants to develop a website to promote the centre. You've been asked to develop a number of pre-production documents to do this. Kinds of things we might underline here is the name of the project, youth hashtag, because one of the things you could do for a pre-production document is come up with a logo for this. I would also underline the fact that it's for teenagers because it's a youth centre, the fact that it's open in the evenings, okay. We know that it's opening in September because it says it's opening up ready for the start of the new school year. School year always starts in September. And also underline this, that it's the police community support officers are also involved, okay? And website, you know what kind of product they want you to produce, okay? So in 5 seconds there, we've underlined some of those key things, okay? So remember, really important for the exam, and I've said this so many times, I'm getting sick of myself. The command word is the important thing that I want you to look at for each question. Okay, obviously this is important because it's giving you some more detailed information. Okay, but when we come to things like this, state one purpose of a visualization diagram, and you've got 2 lines there, it's only 1 mark. Okay, now one of the things that we talked about in some of our sessions was that people were getting a bit, they were tripping themselves up basically, because they were looking at that and thinking, oh, I clearly have to write quite a bit here, I have to write a sentence or 2 sentences because that's how much space they've given me. Okay, however, the command word is state. Okay, so they're not asking you for an explanation, they're not saying explain one purpose of a visualization diagram, they're just saying state. So all they want is for you to tell them what is one purpose of a visualization diagram. So if actually your answer only takes up the first part of the line, that's fine, because the command word is the important thing. Okay. Here then, state 2 items that could be included in a visualization diagram for a website homepage. Again, they're just asking you to tell them 2 things that could go on a visualization diagram for a web page. That's it. Okay, no more detail. However, on this question 1B, the command word is explain. So this is where we do need some more detail. We do need the reasons why. Okay, so look at those command words. Think about, what does that command word mean? Okay, again, we've got another question there, state. Okay, and if you remember, I said at the beginning of this video, they would probably ask you to say the purpose of these different documents, the purpose of a mind map or the purpose of a visualization diagram, and they have within the first 2 questions. We've got state one purpose of the visualization diagram and state one purpose of the mind map. And if you remember, again, back to the beginning of this video about 42 minutes ago, I showed you exactly where they were. Okay, so if we quickly go back to our booklet, we can see that the purpose of a, not that, the purpose of a mind map, sorry about this guys, purpose of a mind map is help you organize your creative thoughts. Okay, so that is why I've been saying to you for so long, we need to burn this revision booklets into our minds, okay, because all the answers are there for you, right? Right, let's switch back to the question paper. Okay. All right, so youth wants you to create a mood board for the website. Identify 4 items that could be included on a mood board. Again, I went through, showed you all those little bullet pointed lists in your revision guide where the answers to those are. Again, don't be confused by the fact that they've left you this big long line, okay? It just says identify 4 items. So that could just be 4 single word answers there, okay? And you'd get 4 marks as long as they're the ones out of your revision booklet, okay? Here we have, though, a bit of a different one with the command word explain. So we do need reasons why. We do need explanations there. Again, we need explanations here because it tells you to explain. That's where you might answer the question and give the reason why you've answered it that way, okay? So why is a PNG suitable for a new logo? Okay. Now we've gone to another identify question. Oh, we've got a problem here, so I need to refresh that. While that's refreshing, I will just look at the chat and answer any questions. So, question again from Sapphire, what will come up in the exam? So the exam is just about the pre-production documents that we've covered, Sapphire. So it's just about those 6 pre-production documents. It's just about pre-production. It could be mood boards, mind maps, scripts, storyboard, visualization diagram. Oh, I can't spell storyboard. Let's go back to that. Or work plan. Okay. Usually the exam will cover between 2 and 4 of those different kinds of documents. Okay, so if I can get this working, right, okay, what I need to do is, sorry everybody, I need to download this off the website again because it's not letting me get back on to download it, but it is definitely on your Google Classroom, these post, I can't even remember which one it was now, that's annoying. No, it's not that one. Yeah, this is one. Okay. All right, where did we get up to? So, okay, so now we've moved on to section B. So if you notice, the first section will give you your brief, okay, and then it will ask you some very basic questions really about 2 or 3 types of pre-production documents. And generally those questions are things like state what they're for and tell me what should go on them, okay? And then when we get to section B, okay, this is where youth has provided you with the following project brief. Okay, so it's giving you some more information. We want a new multimedia website that is modern in its look, dynamic and interactive, appeals to young people. Okay, the website needs to provide its users with enough information about the youth centre so that they know what is happening and when. The youth centre has a coffee shop, basketball courts, tennis table, table tennis, computer access and a music studio. It's open every evening, Monday to Friday, between 6 and 9. There will also be visits to other places such as ice rinks and Tenpin bowling. So then this question is, identify 4 client requirements other than the launch date for the finished website. Okay, so basically all of the answers to the questions are in this little box here. Okay, all you have to do is pick them out. So it's asking you, what are 4 things that the client wants you to do? What are the 4 things that the client needs, okay, other than the launch date? Okay, so it tells you here that it needs to launch on the 5th, so it doesn't want that, okay, because it's already told you it wants something else. Okay, so we need to look for 4 things that this project brief is telling you to make sure you include for the client. Okay, so all the answers are there. You've just got to pick them out. Okay, it's even told you one of the things not to include. Okay, so it could be, it's asked you that the website is interactive. Okay, so that could be one answer. And again, the command question is identify. So you don't even need an explanation. You could just write the word interactive website. Done. Okay, number 2, let's jump to this last bit. It tells you we also want to enable people to sign up to email alerts about news and events. So that's another one. Users should be able to sign up to email alerts. Okay. So section B then is more about you finding the clues to answer the questions about specific pre-production documents. Because if we go on to the next part of question 5, which is also in section B, they're saying you'll be required to create a work plan, explain one effect the time requirements of the project brief will have on the timeline of the work plan. Okay, so the time requirements of the project brief, it tells you here that it needs to launch for the 5th of July in time for the summer holidays. Okay. So that might tell you that would explain one effect the time requirement it gives you the deadline of when it needs to be finished. Now we have our more creative question. Using the information contained in the brief, create a mind map of the possible content for the website. Okay, so here in this box you would create a mind map. That's 12 marks. Okay, so that's why it's important, as you've seen in the revision guide, that you go through what should be included in these documents and you look at the examples and you practice them, because you're going to be asked to produce one in the exam, and that's 12 marks. Okay. Okay, so then you're going to have a couple of questions, or you have one question about target audience. If you remember on your mock exam, that one question was telling you, it said something about, this is one category that we would use to target the audience, identify 2 more. Okay, on this one it's asking you, youth caters for a diverse target audience, explain one factor that will need to be considered to enhance the website's accessibility. So that's about ensuring that all people can access a website. So it might be that you have a function on the website to increase the size of everything, so that somebody who's blind or visually impaired can still see things. Or you might have an ability to for the website to be interactive, where when you hold the mouse over something, it reads it for you. Okay, for somebody who struggled with reading, or for somebody whose English language isn't their first language, something like that. Okay, so it's about ensuring that everybody can access the website. Okay, so again, we've got 2 questions about identify. So again, although it's given you, lots of lines there, an identify command word is quite short. Okay, so you might write 2 sentences there, you might write 1. It's not about how much you write, it's about answering the question correctly. Okay, so the website will include a membership section where people can sign up for email alerts. Identify 2 steps that youth must take when collecting members' data. Okay, so that's about, obviously, the storage of personal data and making sure it's secure. And then identify 2 steps that youth must take when storing members' data. Okay, so obviously that's about how you ask people the questions about their information, because that's about collection of data, and this one is about storing it. Okay, so it's just about reading the questions carefully and looking at what is that command word telling me to do. If we go on to the last part, so this is section C. Okay, so section C, they will always give you an example of a pre-production document, and then they will ask you to assess it. So as I've said to you before, and we did go over this in a revision session as well, this is a little bit like a peer assessment that we might do in a lesson, where you look at somebody else's work and you give them some things that are good about it and some things that are not so good about it and what they need to improve. That's essentially what the final question, section C, will always ask you to do. So in this example, or from this paper, this is a first draft of a visualization diagram of a members page of the website. Then it's saying, discuss the suitability of the visualization diagram as a pre-production document. You should include any areas for development, or sorry, for improvement. And again, I've been over this with you guys before. This is a 12-mark question, okay? If we imagine each paragraph, if we write it as a PEE paragraph, a point, evidence, explain, we could be getting 1 mark for our point, 1 mark for our evidence, 2 to 3 marks for our explanation. So we're looking at, say, 4 marks per paragraph. Okay, so we should be writing 3 paragraphs to get 12 marks. 4 marks per paragraph, 3 paragraphs, 12 marks. Okay, so in that case, then we should find 3 things about this pre-production document that are either good or not so good, or we could find 1 thing that's good and 2 things that are not so good. Okay, it's because this is like doing peer assessment on someone. Okay, so we might look back at the document and say, well, actually, the layout of the general layout of the document's good, because if this is a web page, okay, what we would want at the top is the logo of the web page, or the name of the web page. That's what we see on most web pages, along with a navigation bar underneath it. That's how most web pages are built and designed, and so that could be our first paragraph. Okay, so then we make a point that answers the question. So the point that answers the question is, the suitability of this visualization diagram is that the layout is good because, so, or the layout is appropriate because, or the layout is suitable, or the layout is effective. So that's your point that answers the question. Okay, your evidence is, and your evidence and explanation can sometimes go together, and in this case they would, where you would say, well, the evidence is at the top of the page we have a logo telling you what the web page is, and underneath that we have a navigation bar. That's your evidence. Your explanation then is explaining, well, actually, this is how all web pages are designed. You have to have a navigation bar near the top, because otherwise there's no point having a navigation bar at the bottom where somebody has to scroll all the way through a web page just to be able to get to a different page. Okay, so you could say, well, this is how all web pages are designed. You have to have a navigation bar near the top because it allows the website to be used properly by the audience. And then you could even throw in a very, very simple example where you might say, for example, Google. When you have a Google search, you put your search into the box, and then when the results come up, above the results, you have the navigation bar, because you have that list that allows you to click between image, videos, maps, that sort of thing. Okay, very simple example. So that's 1 paragraph. Second paragraph, you might talk about the fact that, is this pre-production document very suitable, because actually we've got all this blank space here. You know, if somebody gave you this as a visualization diagram and said, go away and make this web page, you would struggle a little bit, because actually so much of it is blank and unused. And so you would struggle to build the web page, because you don't know what the person wants on the rest of it, because we've got all this blank space here. So that could be your second paragraph. Okay, so that takes you up to 8 marks maybe with your second paragraph. Okay, and then you might, next one could be something like, there's no colour on here. There's no discussion of what colours are going to be used anywhere. So that's pretty difficult then for somebody to use this visualization diagram to go and make the website, because there's no colour on there. So that could be your final paragraph. PEE, point, evidence, explain. 4 marks each, 12 marks in total. Okay. So remember what I've said about all of the documents that you need being on the Google Classroom. So there's 4 past papers on there that I can only get hold of those. I wish I could give you more, but I haven't got access to any more. There's also the digital copy of the revision guide and the digital copy of the camera angles document that we've been through in this video as well. Okay, before I go, just check if anybody's asked me any questions or if anybody wants to get any questions in before I go. So I've got another question here. How long is the exam? So the exam is 1 hour and 15 minutes. Okay. Again, if you look at the past papers that I've put on the Google Classroom for you, you'll see they all say duration 1 hour 15 minutes. So it's not very long, this exam. Okay. And if you remember in the revision session we did last week, I said to you guys, for the creative question where you're being asked to create a pre-production document such as this one, okay, you know, yes, it's important. It's 12 marks on this paper. The last mock paper that you did, it was a 7 marker. So yeah, it's a lot of marks, but actually if you spend all your time on this question, then you could potentially miss 10 marks on the next questions that are coming up. Because if you add all these together, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's 13 marks you could potentially miss because you've run out of time because you've spent too long on this one. Okay, so timing is really important. I would kind of think of it as, you know, say this question's worth 12 marks, I would think about spending no more than 10 minutes on this question. Yes, it's 12 marks, so it's quite important, but you've got other questions as well. For example, the one at the very end on section C, which is also 12 marks. Okay, and if you know that you struggle a bit more with your writing of essays or mini essays and you think, right, I've got to do 3 paragraphs on this question, then it might be worth jumping forward to this question first, getting your 3 paragraphs done, and then going back to your more creative question that is drawing. So, and in a way, it doesn't have to be quite as neat, okay? Because you could also label it to help you as well. One other thing that I've just thought come into my head about this, if they ask you to do a storyboard, for example, so this creative question could be using the information contained, create a storyboard, they will give you a template to use. Okay, so they will give you a little table essentially with like the little boxes for your scene content, the little boxes for you to write, you know, dialogue and sound and camera angles and things like that. Okay, so they will give you a template to use for some things. Right, we've got any more questions before I go? Okay, so question, what mark do you have to get a distinction? So the exam paper is worth 60 marks in total. And in order, to get a level 2 distinction, you need to get 54 marks or plus, okay? Now, that is based, that 54 marks or more is based on last year's grade boundaries. So that could change, and it could be that this year the grade boundary is higher or lower, but those are the grade boundaries that I've used to mark everybody's mock exam, because it's the last ones I've got to go on, okay? So as I said, you know, they could change a little bit for the upcoming year, but we don't know that essentially until after the mock, sorry, after the real exams happened. But that's what it was last year. Just to remind you all that there are different, you can get a level 1 distinction or a level 2 distinction on this paper. Okay, so you can get a set of level 1 qualifications, so it could be level 1 pass, level 2, level 1 merit, level 1 distinction, or you can get level 2 pass, level 2 merit, level 2 distinction. The difference between that is a level 2 qualification would match a GCSE. So a level 2 distinction or a level 2 merit would match or be the equivalent of a GCSE qualification, because those are also level 2 qualifications. The level 1 qualifications are the one underneath, essentially. So obviously we're all aiming for the level 2 versions, level 2 pass, level 2 merit, level 2 distinction. Do we have any more questions? Right, where's it gone? My question box. Okay, not had any more questions, so I'm going to kind of assume that everybody's okay. No, nothing else is popping up. So if you do have any questions later on today when you do some revision, maybe later on this afternoon or this evening, if you email them to me, you should all have my email address. I'll pop it into the chat now. Have that right? Yes, I have. Okay, so I've popped that into the chat now, so you can email me if you're stuck. And then obviously that's my school email address, so if you're stuck you can email me that and it will pop up on my phone and I can answer any questions that you need to. And obviously I will see you tomorrow for a lesson. We've got a double lesson tomorrow, and I will also be running a revision session after school tomorrow as well. But obviously, as I've said to you guys, that's the night before the exam, so it's quite last minute. So I'm hoping and praying that you've all taken my advice and done revision over the weekend, not just an hour here and an hour there, some deep in-depth revision. Okay, so thank you guys for logging on. You can watch this online with the same link afterwards if you want to, the recorded version, but you won't be able to ask me any questions. Okay, thanks year 11. I hope you've been doing loads and loads of revision.